The prairie wind moved like a whisper across the open fields, carrying with it the scent of dust, sun, and forgotten dreams. The church stood alone against the endless horizon, its wooden frame weathered by time, its steeple reaching skyward like a plea for mercy. The land around it was empty, save for the long stretch of grass and a single figure approaching on horseback. He rode slow, his hat pulled low to block the afternoon glare, his coat heavy with dust from the trail. His name was Calder Boone, a man shaped by mountains and solitude. He had wandered the frontier for years, hunting bounties, surviving winters that would have killed weaker men. But there was something in his eyes, something he never spoke of, a ghost he carried. He didn't come to this valley for peace. He came because of a letter. No name, no signature, just words. Come to St. Mary's Church by the mountain pass before the sunset. You owe me one thing still. The words burned in his mind as he dismounted. The horse snorted and pawed at the dry earth while Calder took off his hat, squinting toward the chapel. The doors were open. Inside, light spilled across the pews in golden stripes. And then he saw her. She stood near the altar, dressed in white lace that caught the sunlight like frost. A veil rested over her hair, trembling with every breath of wind that slipped through the open door. Her hands were folded, her posture calm, but there was something in the air, an ache, a stillness that made Calder's throat tighten. He stepped closer, boots echoing softly on the wooden floor. "Ma'am," he said, his voice rough from the trail. "You sent for me?" She turned slowly, lifting her veil. And for the first time in years, he forgot how to breathe. Her face, he knew it, somewhere in the corners of memory, half buried beneath regret and whiskey and distance. Eyes the color of twilight, a small scar just beneath her lip. He had seen that face before, when life was kinder, when he was still a man worth loving. But before he could speak, she whispered, voice trembling, but steady enough to pierce through the silence. "You don't remember me, do you?" The question cut deeper than any bullet ever had. He stared at her, jaw tight. "Should I?" A sad smile curved on her lips, the kind that comes when pain has learned to wear beauty as its disguise. She stepped forward, her white dress brushing the dusty floor. "I was the girl you left behind, Mountain Man." The name hit him like a blow. Only one person had ever called him that. Years ago, back in the highlands of Montana, the cabin by the river, the girl who used to wait at the edge of the woods every dawn, bringing him coffee she could barely afford. Evelyn. He whispered her name like a prayer. Eve. She looked at him then, not like a woman meeting her past, but like a bride confronting her fate. "You left without a word, said you had to find yourself out there in the mountains. I waited, Calder. A year. 2. Then the letter stopped coming. The man I loved never came back." Calder's chest tightened. He'd thought she was gone, that she'd married, moved east, forgotten the man he'd been. He'd left because he thought she deserved better than the blood on his hands, the bounty hunter's life that had turned him half into a ghost. "I had to," he muttered. "The world I walked in, It wasn't meant for you." Evelyn shook her head. "And yet I walked through it anyway, alone." The silence between them stretched, thick and heavy. Outside, the sun began to sink, spilling gold across the land. The sound of the horses' restless hooves echoed faintly, a reminder that time was still moving, even when hearts stood still. He finally found his voice. "Why now, Evelyn? Why call me here?" Her gaze faltered for a moment, and then she turned slightly toward the altar. A single candle flickered there, beside a small wooden box wrapped in faded ribbon. "Because I'm getting married," she said softly. The words struck like lightning. Calder felt his throat close. "Married?" She nodded. "Tomorrow. But I needed to see you first. To tell you that you didn't destroy me. That I found peace even after you left." He looked at her hands, trembling slightly. "And you needed me here for that?" She smiled faintly. "No, I needed me here for that." For a moment, neither spoke. Only the wind answered through the cracks in the wooden walls. Calder turned his gaze to the mountains beyond the open door, where the sky burned orange and violet. He'd crossed those peaks countless times, searching for something he could never name. And now, standing before her, he realized what it was. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small silver locket, tarnished with age. "I kept it," he said. "You gave me this before I left. Said it'd remind me of home." Evelyn's eyes softened as she looked at it, tears glinting. "And did it?" He nodded slowly. "Every damn day." The moment hung between them, raw, unguarded, too fragile to last. Evelyn stepped closer, her hand brushing his. "Goodbye, Calder Boone. May the mountains finally let you rest." And before he could speak, she slipped the veil back over her face and walked past him, out into the fading light. Calder turned to watch her go, her white figure fading into the distance. The wind picked up, and he heard the faint sound of a horse whinnying beyond the chapel hill. Then nothing but silence. He stood there for a long time, hat in hand, staring at the horizon that had stolen everything from him once and given nothing back. The candle at the altar flickered until it went out, and in the growing dark, Calder Boone whispered to the empty church. The last glint of sunlight had vanished behind the ridges when Calder Boone finally stepped out of the church. The air carried the sharp scent of pine and cooling dust, a promise of the storm that sometimes rolled down from the mountains after dusk. He stood there a long while, hat in hand, staring at the fading trail where Evelyn's white dress had disappeared. In all his years wandering, he'd faced wolves, bandits, winters that could freeze a man's soul. Yet none of it compared to the quiet ache that filled him now. He tied his horse's reins to the hitching post, but didn't mount. Something about that meeting gnawed at him, the way she'd said goodbye. Soft, but not final. The look in her eyes, as if she were carrying more truth than she'd spoken. He turned back toward the chapel. The candle had gone out, but a faint glow from the moon slipped through the cracked doorway. Inside, silence lay heavy. The scent of wax and cedar still lingered. Calder walked back to the altar, boots creaking over the wooden boards. That's when he saw it. a folded piece of paper resting beside the small wooden box Evelyn had left behind. His name was written on it in her familiar hand. Calder Boone. He hesitated before picking it up, as though the letter might burn him. The paper was rough, edges frayed, like it had been written long ago and carried close to her heart. He unfolded it slowly. If you're reading this, it means I found the courage to face you. I never stopped wondering why you left, but I understand now that some wounds are born from love, not cruelty. The man I'm to marry saved my life once, but my heart never truly healed. There is something I must tell you before I become his wife. Calder frowned. The words trailed off mid-sentence. The rest of the page was missing, torn clean away. He lifted the box. It was light. Unlocked, inside lay a gold ring, tarnished with age, the same ring he had once carved from a coin during a long mountain winter, meant for her finger, but never given. Beneath it, a small map drawn in ink. It marked the valley beyond the ridge, and a name he hadn't heard in years. Harlan Creed. Calder's heart dropped. Creed was no savior. Creed was the outlaw who'd once ridden with him, back when the bounty trade was bloodier than gold. A killer turned land baron, known for taking what wasn't his, especially people. If Evelyn was marrying that man, it wasn't out of love. He pocketed the ring and the torn letter. Jaw tight. You got yourself tangled with the devil, Eve, he muttered, and I let it happen. Outside, thunder rumbled deep in the hills. Calder saddled up, pulling his coat tighter against the rising wind. The trail to Creed's estate cut through the canyon. A narrow path between jagged cliffs and old pines. He'd ridden it before, back when both he and Creed had bounty prices on their heads instead of reputations to keep. Hours passed under a bruised sky. Lightning flashed, briefly lighting the valley below. And there it was. Creed's manor, built from stone and arrogance, its windows glowing like eyes in the dark. Horses were tied out front, too many for a quiet night before a wedding. He counted at least 8 men, hired guns. He dismounted in the shadows and listened. Laughter drifted from inside, the rough kind that came with whiskey and danger. Calder's fingers brushed the revolver at his side. Old instincts stirred, the hunter in him waking. He moved toward the back of the house, where a dim window stood open. Inside, he saw her, Evelyn, still in her wedding dress, veil gone, pacing near the fireplace. A man sat across from her, broad-shouldered, scarred, and grinning like sin itself. Harlan Creed. Calder couldn't hear every word, but he caught enough. "You'll make a fine bride, darlin'," Creed drawled. "Not for love, no. For legacy. The Boone name may be dirt, but yours still shines. Together we'll bury the past where it belongs." Evelyn's voice trembled, but didn't break. "You promised to let him go, to leave him out of this." Creed chuckled. Promised? Oh, Eve. You think the mountain man can just walk away after what he owes me? He took gold that wasn't his, and I intend to collect in blood, if need be. Calder's hands clenched around the window frame. The night outside hissed with rain now. each drop a drumbeat of fury. He'd never stolen gold from Creed, not a coin. Creed had always twisted truth until it screamed. He stepped back into the darkness, heart hammering. He couldn't face her now, not surrounded by Creed's men. But he would come back. Before that wedding bell rang, he'd end this. He rode into the storm, lightning splitting the sky above him, thunder rolling like cannon fire across the valley. In his mind, he heard her voice again, soft and broken. "You don't remember me, do you?" And now he did. He remembered everything, every promise, every lie, every reason he had for leaving, and every reason he had to return. By dawn, he'd reached the old cabin by the river, the place where their story began. The roof sagged, the hearth cold, but the memory was still there. He sat at the table, soaked to the bone, staring at the map again. Creed's estate wasn't just a house. It sat on land that had once belonged to Evelyn's family. Creed had taken it when her father died, leaving her with nothing but the church and a broken name. Calder felt something shift inside him. Not guilt this time, but resolve. The kind of steel that forms when regret turns to purpose. He'd been running from ghosts for years. Now he'd ride straight through them. He tore the missing edge of Evelyn's letter from the map's corner. And there, scrawled faintly in her handwriting, were 4 words. "He knows about us." Calder closed his eyes, the wind howling through the cracks of the old cabin. Creed knew. That meant this wasn't just a wedding. It was a trap. Evelyn had called him to that church, not for closure, but for warning. He stood, reloaded his gun, and looked out toward the dawn bleeding over the peaks. The storm had passed, but the real one was just beginning. "You wanted me back, Eve," he whispered. "You got me." He mounted up, turning toward the valley once more. The sun broke through the clouds, setting the wet grass ablaze with light. Somewhere down there, the bells of St. Mary's would ring at noon, calling a bride to her fate. But before they did, Calder Boone would ride through fire itself to rewrite the ending she'd been forced to accept. And in that first flash of sunlight, the mountain man smiled for the first time in years. A grim, quiet promise. Arr! If this chapter pulled you deeper into Calder and Evelyn's world, hit that subscribe button and join the trail for the next story, where love, revenge, and redemption collide beneath the western sky. Arr! Would you like me to continue with Chapter 3, where Calder returns to confront Harlan, Creed before the wedding, and uncovers the shocking truth Evelyn has been hiding?